This is why you died.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to This Is Why You Died, the horror film podcast that asks, why do people die so much in horror movies when they could have just done something much better with their time? We choose horror movies from random prompts that we draw at the end of every episode, and then once we've all seen the film, we come back here and dissect and dismember it for the enjoyment of you, our dear dedicated listeners. We are the Dead Boys. My name is Sir Ian Dangerous, and I am joined, as always, by the King of Killers, Dan Marcha Madness, and the Prince of Pain, Ryan Ross Live. How you doing, gentlemen?
Killers. What does that mean?
I was going to say, we're royalty now.
Oh, man.
I think that you guys are the masochist. Prince of Pain seems more fitting for the two of you than me, I'd say.
I never defined if it was sadism or masochism, man. So
that's fair. I did agree to this after all.
You did agree to this after all. So if you're just joining us, thank you very much for finding our humble little show. Please, of course, do your duty, stab the heart button, slay the share square, and tell everyone you know to check out this show. And please follow our new Instagram account at TIWYD. This is why you died. TIWYD pod over on Instagram. We're thinking of starting TikTok too, but let's see if it gets banned first. How about we do that before we invest any time over there?
That's probably fair.
How about that? So, as I said, we draw a prompt at the end of every show. This show is Ryan's pick. It's Ryan's turn this time. But before we get into what you picked and why you picked it, Ryan, first, I just want to check it on you boys. As of recording, we just went by Thanksgiving. How was your holiday, guys? Are you still fat and rolling around, or do we have a slim one? How are we doing this time of year?
It was a nice, relaxing time, actually. I think I took a couple days to be able to catch up and actually watch movies again. So it was nice to kind of reconnect to being lazy. So, and eating a lot. It was a good Thanksgiving.
As it should be, frankly.
Indeed.
Honestly, mine was pretty low key as well. I spent some time with cousins and family. And then the big news in my household is that we got cats today, which is a big moment for us. We've been waiting to get pets for a long time, and Sasha and I were able to pick up a pair bonded set of kittens today, and we're very excited.
A pair?
Oh, wow.
Two
Yes.
cats.
Black and white Siamese. They thought they were siblings, but they're rescues. It turns out that the boy might be a little bit older. We named them Nix and Nova, and we're very excited to have them.
Wow.
Nice. Congratulations. Congratulations on joining the ranks of the catted, those who have cats. Your house will never smell the same again.
That's fair.
I'm still very fat from Thanksgiving. I am also still kind of getting over the laziness, but luckily we are going to get over our laziness very quickly on this show because Ryan drew the prompt slasher.
I did.
Which is probably that's like one of the heaviest prompts you could draw for this show. That's one of the most
golden ticket.
Yeah, golden ticket. One of the most loaded.
Yeah, Wonka's golden ticket.
It's such a loaded one. So Ryan, would you please say what you picked and explain why you picked it?
I picked Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And the reason being is because as a slasher, I feel like the most iconic slasher sound is the classic knife wielding. And that was the first thing I thought of. But in addition to that, I felt like generally anytime I think slasher, I think man with a knife. And the first man with a knife that I could think of, I did debate going the whole Michael Myers route because he's a classic, but I've never actually seen Psycho. And it being kind of such a pillar and being an older film, I felt like this was a great excuse to watch it. But what I found out after my selection that you two asked me about is that you guys say that this movie isn't a slasher film.
Well, and this is one thing, we'll get into that in the show because it is debatable if it's a slasher.
I was going to say, I think I might be a little justified here.
You might be, and I can't wait to discuss whether or not Psycho is a slasher. But first things first, as you say, Ryan, this was your first time ever seeing Psycho. Dan and I had seen it before and loved it because, of course, it's Psycho.
Yeah.
It's one of the classics. But Ryan, you'd never seen it before. So before we get into the actual movie, what did you know about Psycho before you watched it? Like, what was your perception of the movie before you watched it?
I knew very little. I know the basics in terms of like, obviously I've been on like the Universal Studios tour. So they have the Bates Motel as like a scene on that tour. I knew Norman Bates was the killer. Beyond that, almost nothing. And then obviously I knew the like iconic shower scene in terms of like, there's a woman in the shower who gets stabbed and there's like, she screams and there's blood and whatever. But like outside of that, it was pretty much blank. I knew it was black and white too, I guess. But I was going in pretty blind. And I, even watching it, I didn't know quite what to expect. I was surprised, by how little dialogue there's in the movie. I feel like there's a lot of dialogueless time. Is that a word? There's a lot of watching people do things, search rooms, whatever. And I blatantly thought that the first guy we meet was going to be Norman Bates, and then it wasn't. And then I was like, what am I watching? And so that's kind of how I walked into it, I guess.
Well, so, and did it work for you though? Like, so Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense. So then you watched the movie, you had almost no preconceived notions of it other than pretty much what I would assume anyone's kind of pop culture awareness of it would be: the shower scene, Norman Bates, the Bates Motel, the big iconic moments.
Exactly.
But once you watched it, did the suspense work for you? Was it still a suspenseful movie for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that like I was very engaged with the what's up with his mom thing. I think that still very much holds up. And the other thing that I caught really early, especially with her driving sequences and the police officer, is that he did a really good job of making her seem tense and making the scene uncomfortable and making it seem like she's constantly under threat, even when it's mostly imagined in her own head of like, she's built this circumstance around herself where she's paranoid and we as the audience feel that. And that was really cool to witness because as a much older film, that still totally holds up. You like, there are technical stuff that you notice that you're like, wow, this feels a little clunky or like whatever, but all of that still completely plays. And so that was very cool.
That's awesome. So you had a pretty good experience with it overall.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Before we dive deep into it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think that like it makes sense why it stood up for the test of time and why it's such a classic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Dan, what is your relationship to Psycho?
Okay, so well, and then let's preface this, spoiler alert, we're gonna get into the twists of this movie, correct, in our discussion?
Of course.
Okay, so sorry, audience, you've had what, 60 years to watch this thing, so catch up. But
it's more than that now.
Yeah, is it
64 years.
Wow.
64 years.
Yeah, catch up.
It can get senior discount.
So I have to say that I feel kind of envious of Ryan at this moment because I think just because it's so iconic in pop culture, I always knew the twist of who was behind everything before ever watching the movie. So I never got to
Really?
So I never got to experience Psycho. Like, it's like watching The Sixth Sense knowing that twist like before ever watching it. It's like you get to miss out on something. So rewatching it again, I appreciate it on so many other different levels that we'll touch upon, but I have to say that I feel bummed hearing Ryan talk about it because I never got to go into Psycho being that in the dark about it because I knew the ending, so to speak, before even going into it. And then it's like, okay, let me see why Norman Bates and why this character is so iconic. Let me watch this movie now. And that's when I got into Psycho. So
that's funny. That's similar to my experience with it as well, which was that I knew pretty much everything about it before I watched it. And so I just really watched it from a technical standpoint once I watched it. I actually read the book by Robert Bloch before I even saw the movie. I saw the movie pretty late in life. And the book was actually written 3 years before the movie came out.
That's a really short timeline.
It is, but not too uncommon when you think about if a book comes out and it hits the public consciousness and they want to capitalize on it before someone else does.
That's true.
Yeah.
Which was the case
and
here.
I also imagine that was probably easier to do back then. I imagine there were less options overall.
Yes and no. If I can quickly just talk about Hitchcock's process of getting this made, because it wasn't easy for him. He had just been coming off of North by Northwest, which was a big success. He actually got some pushback from the studio because he wanted to do this. He brought up doing this book and they didn't want anything to do with it. He had to finance the movie himself, which is crazy because at this point, Hitchcock was already being called a master. And yet Paramount was like, no, we don't want to do this weird little movie about killers and stuff that sounds terrible. He was even they were trying to talk him out of it even while he was making it. His producers at Shamley. He actually ended up financing it himself for $800,000 and shot it in black and white, partly artistically, but partly because it was just cheaper.
Mhm.
And he knew he could get away with the gore. He convinced Bernard Herrmann, the guy who did the score, who was a legendary film score guy. Like he's the guy, he did like Taxi Driver and Day the Earth Stood Still and Cape Fear and Twisted Nerve and Citizen Kane. He got him to do it for half his price.
That's insane.
I mean, the score is iconic already because, like, even from the opening credits, you're just locked into this sound. You know,
The score is one of my all-time favorite scores. Wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award.
Wow.
Absolute crime.
Well, I also saw it was popping up before the movie started that originally it was critically panned, and then because of the popularity of the audience, that then it got reevaluated. Like it's interesting. I didn't realize that there were that many barriers for it.
There was a British critic named Carolyn Lejeune. I think she wrote for The Observer. She walked out of the theater before the movie was over and quit her job at the paper because of this movie.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it was really scandalous for its time. I mean, it opens on a shot of a couple in bed, like having just banged, and Janet Leigh, who was a pretty big star at this point, she was really well known, and she took a pay cut to be in this. She did it for half her normal rate because she wanted to work with Hitchcock, and she also knew that she couldn't get her full rate because it was essentially a supporting role, which she did get nominated for Best Supporting Actress. But she's in her skivvies, she's in her bra, which was not unheard of, but also like pretty risque, especially like here's a guy with his shirt off, and they censored the hell out of it in Britain and Ireland, especially. Like they objected to the line where she said, "Put your shoes on," or your shoes aren't even on, because that implied that he had taken his pants off.
Wow.
And that was somehow
That's hilarious.
Isn't that?
Well, it's funny to me that you say gore, because like one of the things that I caught was that it was such an old movie, and this was probably one of the first ones that did it. I was like, the amount of blood in that shower is like less than an average nosebleed. I feel like it's like a sprinkling of blood. Like this woman got stabbed in this bathtub, and it's like, oh, like a little squirt of blood. They like have a little bit of tinting. Like I was like, wow, they really. This was really a novel thing at the time. You can see it.
It was, but it was also the violence, the suddenness, and the brutality of that scene was of the shower scene. If we're going to start talking about that, I mean, that was insane for that time. And it was because of the editing. They did, I think, 52 cuts in like 30 seconds. It's debated how many setups they actually did, but like Hitchcock said they did 75 different camera setups to catch everything.
Yeah, I heard that too.
And like some other people who actually like analyzed it were like, nah, it's more like 60. But it's still, that's nuts for that short little thing. Like he knew it was the centerpiece of the movie. And another actual little bit of trivia about that is that, again, so Bernard Herrmann, who did the score, did you know that he actually had written the little ring, ring, ring? He wrote that, and Hitchcock told him not to because he wanted the shower scene to be silent. He wanted it to be like the sound of stabbing and her screaming, and that's it.
Yeah.
Which on paper, like conceptually, yeah, that sounds really horrifying and gruesome and brutal.
Yeah.
But then Herrmann went and wrote that score and brought it in, and he played it, and Hitchcock went, all right, yeah, you're right. That sounds
good.
Way more gnarly.
It's the moment.
Yeah. It became iconic.
It's great. Yeah.
That's ultimately the thing that drew me to the movie to pick in the first place. Like that's so culturally prevalent in terms of like, if you're miming a knife, that is the sound that comes in. Like it became iconic, and so that's what it's so funny to me that almost wasn't there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think we're just like saying that. I mean, that's a really interesting point. It's so iconic because of what it was doing at that time, like how it really pushed the boundaries. I imagine, like rewatching the shower scene again, I was like, man, it's like we're just without the music in the moment of her like getting into the shower and then just showering, and then it almost feels like we're watching a shampoo commercial in a moment. Like I was rewatching, I was like,
for a second,
I was like, this is getting like very like she looks so happy and she's like smiling almost, and then and then when Mother comes in, it's like everything changes. But it's just so like if you go back 64 years, it's just like they probably really pushed the boundaries of like it just felt real. It just felt like we were like peering into this girl we were in the hotel room with her.
Again, like Ryan said earlier, where it's very slice of life. Even after he stops peeping Tomming on her, he walks off and then it's just her kind of like casually getting ready to go in the shower and everything normal. But you just know something's off because it's Hitchcock. And then when it does happen, it's such like a sinking feeling in your gut when the door opens and the shape comes in.
That clear shower curtain was brilliant.
Yeah.
The fact
So
that they were
good.
able to just kind of like have it silhouetted and you can't quite see. That's that brilliant. Just brilliant.
Clear enough that you can see the shape through it, but not clear enough to be able to see Janet Leigh's boobs when you're shooting it the other way.
True.
But brilliant, really. And every detail, of course, is so perfectly done. It's funny when you go back and watch it because if you go frame by frame, it's just brilliantly done to not actually show the knife piercing skin, to not actually show
absolutely.
a nipple or anything that's too outre. Of course, it's an iconic scene for a reason. And to your point, they were saying that at the time that the movie was very exploitative, that it was too over the top. Hitchcock had finally lost it and just gone too far. But we look back at it now and it's such a watershed movie in so many ways because not only the violence and the sex, but also in its depiction of the psychology of a killer. And Hitchcock was always very fascinated by crime and by the psychology of people who did crime. Like, you know, she doesn't just die and then Norman finds her. It's him and how he cleans it up. The way he looks around the room and figures out what to do next. Oh, I've got to pick this up and I got to grab this. Is he going to leave behind the money or not? Everything becomes very much what's in the mind of the person who's involved in the crime, right? And so and the fact that he decided to take a story that was about someone who was deeply mentally disturbed, psycho, if you will, that, you know, it then gave him a really good bit of canvas to put a whole different kind of killer on the movie on the screens. And actually that kind of leads me in a way. I do want to come back around to that and talk about where they got the idea for Norman Bates from. But I want to we have to talk about the elephant in the room. We do.
What's that?
And that is that, Ryan, you picked this because of slasher.
Yeah. And I honestly, after watching it, because you guys, I'll like, just a little backstory for those listening at home. After we like the first time, both of like, you can hear the pause of like the shock between these two. And then we cut recording and they're like, hey, you know that's not technically a slasher. And I'm like, what do you mean? And we had a whole conversation about it. But honestly, after watching it, I kind of stand by it. I think that like,
okay, let's
granted,
talk about
I don't know like the de facto definition of slasher from a horror perspective, right? I know the definition of slasher from a very pop culture, very plebeian perspective compared to the experts in the room here. But I would argue that a slasher movie is a movie about a killer who wields a knife, who kills multiple victims, and that is the major like momentum of the plot of the horror film. And by that definition, this movie fits that definition. Now, again, I don't know what the actual definition is, but I did a little bit of research and I did see that generally speaking, Halloween is considered the first de facto slasher movie in terms of the genre, but that Psycho is considered to have planted the seeds for the slasher genre.
Okay.
So real quick, you and you're not wrong, but Dan, would you like to pick this up? What is your definition of a slasher movie, the slasher subgenre of horror movies?
Oh man, I feel like I need to pass it on to you, Ian, because I still feel like I'm hearing Ryan, and he's making a little bit of sense. So, you know, I'm like I can see where he's coming from in terms of it. I wouldn't think of it as that because there's just a different feeling in a slasher, and I think I can't wait to pass it on to Ian because I know that he's gonna put the nose glasses up and he's got this profound he's gonna have this profound way to describe it. But I think one big thing is that with the slasher, you're never really with the killer often. You're with the victims or the potential victims a lot of some of the time, and you're never really studying that slasher. It's almost like you're hit with them and you're kind of trying to figure out where they are or who they are. If it's a whodunit slasher like a Scream or something, or if it's just a slasher like a Halloween movie. I know that that's not always the case, but that's kind of like one big effect. And I feel like with Psycho, it's a very different movie because it's before that kind of subgenre was really kind of cemented, but it's doing something very different with its time on screen where it's not necessarily trying to build suspense on where Norman is or who's next. It's more like, why is Norman acting this way, or what is going on with Norman? Like, what's this mystery behind who this killer could be? So I don't know.
Might I counter?
Sure, of course.
That technically speaking, as exposited at the end of the movie, it is not Norman who is the slasher. It is Mother who is the slasher. And to your point, we don't spend any time with Mother. And Mother is the whodunit mystery that we have to solve.
Look at that.
So I would almost argue by your definition that we're still in the slasher genre.
Well, look at that. See? Okay, Ian, let's go. Let's go. Because I think I need.
No, I'm enjoying this. You guys go back and forth. It's great.
I mean, I that's what I was saying, that like I'm hearing what Brian's saying, and a lot of it's making sense. Because I wouldn't ever, like, if someone's like, pick your favorite slasher, I wouldn't be like Psycho, that I would never say that. But like, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. So I'm just curious to hear Ian's take.
All right, Ian, square up.
So
let's go.
Let me get comfortable here. So I think in a way you both are right here, because Ryan's not wrong that Psycho can be, in a very loose sense, considered a slasher, or more appropriately a proto slasher. But the thing is that slasher as a genre has become so codified into its tropes starting in the 70s. And Psycho came out in 1960, and there was a long way between 1960 and arguably the first modern slasher, which was Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 74, where you have a lot of those tropes start to get codified. The modern tropes of the modern slasher, like if you consider the eras of slasher films to be like 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre until 1993 is considered like the golden age of slashers, right? You've got Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You've got Friday the 13th. You have Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky, all the 80s slashers and all of like the one-offs that we had in that era. And then starting in the 90s, as we discussed in our episode on Scream came along and broke everything wide open. But of course, 1994 was New Nightmare. And that's considered the beginning of the self-referential era of slashers, where they all had to have some sort of self-knowledge. And then in the 2000s with Final Destination, you had some other ones come along that were trying to reclaim the original genre. And then I would argue personally, this is my opinion, that there's been kind of a postmodern slasher movement coming along since the 2014 or so. So there's been a bunch of waves of slasher movies, but pre-1974, it wasn't codified into what it has been since then, which is a very strictly defined genre where you have an antagonist, a main antagonist, who is human or once was human, basically at some point had a humanity to them. So that's why Alien, Terminator, they're not considered slashers, because they have no morality. They have no morality to have lost, because part of it is that all slashers in some way are concerned with morality. And that's why you have a lot of slashers that are where the victims are engaged in something amoral, puritanically amoral, whether that's sex or drugs or whatever.
Which, for the record, stands for this movie. She is embezzling from her company.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that do translate from this movie. And like, for example, a lot of times slashers are psychologically based, right? The killer kills because of trauma or psychological disorder. Checks your box for Psycho. They typically have an iconic weapon or a killing style. For example, the chainsaw. Jason has a machete. Freddy's got his claws, right? They always, there's usually like an iconic way that they kill or item that they use to kill people with. And in this movie, it was the butcher knife, right? That he was killing with. They tend to be very voyeuristic. We as an audience are going to get a thrill out of watching someone die. And we're being critiqued for that very titillation. And one of the final things is final girls. Girls who are, it's kind of been codified that they're supposed to be virginal or innocent. They're intelligent, they're plucky. And that's actually been played with a lot in the genre. That's only was, I think, some major movies and the critique of them that really became a thing. But typically final girls, they tend to ultimately best the human adversary that they're fighting against. So that's a lot of the tropes of slashers. And as you said, Ryan, that actually Psycho kind of has a lot of that.
It seems to fit pretty much everything but the last one, But even then, to a degree, she manages to hide from him long enough to unearth the truth before the boy comes in for the rescue.
And she doesn't save herself. She is saved.
Correct.
And the guy survives. And there's really only 2 victims in the entire movie that we see.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's not like as high a body count as slashers tend to be once the genre became more codified.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, this is before all of those tropes became a thing.
Correct. And honestly, though, I think to your point, calling it a proto slasher feels fair because, like, I almost feel like this is like the first computer. Like, this is like the computer that was like the whole room. Like, you're working with cards and punches, and like it's basically a big calculator. And now we've got programs and the internet and all this stuff that like goes along with the computer, but that doesn't make the original not a computer. That's how I think this feels, at least to me, in terms of a slasher. Of like, very clearly, this was very like ahead of its time in terms of the stuff that it showed on screen was new. Like I said, like the blood seems really minor. Like we're very much showing key stuff that I guess was risque at the time, but seems very tame now. But all of that still feels, at least from my perspective, as it all still fits. It's just like light. It's like slasher light almost to me.
Slasher adjacent, if you will.
Honestly, I would say on just like not as deep.
Slasher Junior.
Well, I have a challenge for you. At some point, you should check out a movie called Peeping Tom, which came out 3 months before Psycho in the same year. It was a British film. And it deals with a lot of the very similar things. It actually has a main character who's mentally disturbed because of a domineering mother. And unlike in Psycho, we follow him around and see from his perspective as he takes pictures of women and videos of them as he kills them with a very specific instrument, which is the tripod leg of his camera.
Wow.
And he films himself as he does it.
That's brutal.
And it is. It's actually a much more brutal film than Psycho. It's a much more aggressive and dark and disturbing film than Psycho. And it has all of those things that I said about slasher tropes. It has all of them. And it came out 3 months before Psycho. So when I look at Psycho in the context of Peeping Tom, I go, yeah, Psycho is, I guess you could say, a slasher in that it has a lot of the essence of the hallmarks of the genre. But really, if you want to look at a movie that had it had all of the aspects of what became the slasher genre. Peeping Tom was right next to it. It just was completely bulldozed by critics like Psycho was. It just didn't have the audiences to watch it. Partly because they released it to the critics before it came out and the critics savaged it so no one went to see it. Whereas Hitchcock did not screen Psycho for critics. He actually was very, very particular. No one could spoil anything about the movie. He had an embargo for the people who were writing about it. Don't spoil the twist. He told people that if they were late to the screening, they couldn't get in because he didn't want anyone to miss out and come in and have to be told. And so he had very tight control over it. So as a result, it had like an air of mystery to it. And Peeping Tom had none of that. So to your point, Ryan, when you said I want to do Psycho for a slasher, I went, okay. It's not like there's a million movies that are slashers, but it's actually great that you picked this because it means that we get to talk about slasher as a genre as a whole by discussing one of the first movies to really be in the genre.
That's a great point.
It's not a slasher movie in what has become like the common conventional sense of it, but we watched Scream. And what's one of the big punchlines from Scream? When he goes,
which one?
When he turns to her at the end and he reveals that he's the bad guy and he says, we all go a little mad sometimes.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Psycho.
That's true.
Psycho reference.
He quotes Psycho.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I didn't even realize that, but that's true. And like, I think honestly for me, what it comes down to is that this feels like the movie. And granted, like we've discussed Peeping Tom at this point. That's knowledge I don't have. But at least up until this point, this feels like the movie that almost broke that ground of like, if this movie didn't exist, if this movie didn't lay that groundwork, if this movie didn't do what it did, we might not have slasher.
No, it's absolutely right.
You're 100% right on that. You're absolutely right on that. You know, it's if this movie had not become so culturally relevant, it would not. I mean, you had so many movies after this that that took it and ran with it. That Hammer had a whole series of movies about psycho killers. The 60s were full, like the Italian giallo films. We had an entire subgenre built around crime and people being crazy and killing each other. And Baba's Bay of Blood would have never happened. Like there's all kinds of movies that never would have been made that were proto-slashers or were movies that led up to slashers. You never would have had without this, without Psycho being successful, because if Peeping Tom had just come out and there was no Psycho, who knows if we'd ever would have gotten the slasher subgenre, if it would have ever come to that. Also, this movie is one of the ones that started the subgenre of splatter film. You said there's no blood in this, but it pushed the boundaries so far. 3 years later, a movie called Blood Feast came out. It's the first splatter film, and it was inspired by this movie.
Wow.
Well, you can get away with that now? I'm going to make a movie where there's all kinds of gore.
Yeah.
Let's go. The chains are off. Let's rock.
Yeah.
Honestly, the more we talk about it, the more I stand by my decision.
Hey,
I'm
look at that.
feeling validated.
I have to say too that when we're talking about how it's influenced stuff, I do a lot of traveling for work now, and so of course I'm listening to podcasts, and the genre I love is true crime.
Hey, I know a good podcast you should listen to.
This one, no, but like when I now after years of listening to a bunch of true crime podcasts being my main genre I listen to. Rewatching Psycho, I rewatched it in a different way where it really opened my eyes to being like, okay, this was the first time, I'm assuming this is the first time mainstream is just analyzing what happens when there's a murder that takes place that you need to cover up, and you just meticulously show it. Because I was blown away again, just like watching. I was like, wow, they're really spending a lot of time with Norman Bates just cleaning up the place. Quietly, like in the silence of it, dealing with the murder, and like how would you do it, and like like when he's sinking the car in the lake and it stops, and I'm feeling for him too. I'm like, why am I feeling for this murderer? But like you don't know it at the time, but you're like, there's that stress there. It's like, oh, like it definitely laid the groundwork for mainstream acceptance of true crime being entertainment, and so I think that it's what everything that we listen to now, without Psycho, might not be there.
Well, I also think one of the cooler things about like the cleanup and like watching from that angle, like not having known the twist and like having the mystery still there, is it really is framed as almost like it feels like a responsibility. Like he feels like, oh, I have to take care of this. It doesn't seem panicked. It doesn't seem, oh God, like what am I going to do? It seems like, oh, I have to take care of this now. This is an obligation that I have. Let me meticulously go thing to thing and check all these boxes and make sure that I reset this. And it feels like a process for him. Although the one thing with the bog, I was like, how many cars can he fit in this freaking bog? Like, how deep is this bog that he's just throwing cars in and they're like just sinking? And I was like, wow, this must be a really deep little bog that's very convenient to the hotel. But no, I thought that was a very cool angle. And I'll be honest, I was kind of tied into the mystery of like, what's up with the mom? Like, why aren't we seeing the mom? Why is everyone seeing her in the window, but she's not there? Like, I was very caught up in that. And honestly, the sticking point for me was because, like, obviously, I was like, well, there's the possibility that the mom's not there. But I was like, but she heard a conversation between him and his mom. And that was the one that was sticking with me of like, she had all these imagined conversations on the road, but she's in the hotel room and hears them have an argument and then references it to him and he acknowledges it. And I was like, but then who's the other person talking? And I was like really engaged in that. And so that was cool. And I think, honestly, with that context of like not knowing that he was the other person on the other end of the conversation, I love the final shot of this movie. The like him sitting in her monologue and him looking down and like narrating The Fly, like that. I think that the therapist right before it felt a little like exposition dumpy in that scene right before. Yeah, it's little like, and here's the whole plot, but that last scene of him in his own head narrating, and then also him looking up at camera, I was like, that is cool. Like that makes the movie. I feel like that like handful of shots, and like obviously the shower scene is iconic, but I'm surprised that scene hasn't gotten, because
it gives away the movie. I mean, and for people who haven't seen it,
that's true.
It does give it away. That's one of my wallpapers. My wallpaper cycle on my computer. Him smiling is one of my favorite images.
It's so good.
So good.
And he's kind of charming throughout the movie too. I was really surprised. Like he's awkward and there's the weirdness, but like they really play this kind of like he's able to fall back on like, oh, I'm just an awkward, quirky, charming guy. Sorry.
Tony Perkins was another star. He wasn't as big as Janet Leigh, but he was a big star at the time too. And he was a teen idol too. He had like hit songs. Like he was
really?
Oh, Paramount signed him to a 7-picture deal. They wanted him to be their next leading man.
Wow.
There was a whole scandal because the head of Paramount ended up not liking him because he was flaunting the fact that he was in a gay relationship at the time, and they were trying to sell him as, you know, a heterosexual matinee idol. And so the head of Paramount tried to ruin his career, and he ended up having to buy his own contract out. Yeah, Tony Perkins had an interesting life after that as well. He actually ended up having conversion therapy in the 70s and marrying a woman and having kids.
Wow.
Oh God.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the whole thing here, but as a result, thank goodness that he did do that, because as a result, one of his kids ended up becoming a director and is now a fantastic horror movie director named Osgood Perkins.
Osgood Perkins. Long Legs. Just did Long Legs, Ryan. No, Ryan looks so lost.
I know of Long Legs.
Oh gosh.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just taken aback by the fact that a man like later in his life willingly went through conversion. That sounds brutal. But sorry, I'm reeling from that.
That's enough for a whole other podcast, because you know, and then 3 years after Hitchcock died, they came back and he ended up coming back to the series and doing Psycho 2, directing and acting in Psycho 3, and doing Psycho 4, turning into a franchise.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize there were more.
There's a lot happening with this franchise.
Psycho 2 is actually a pretty decent movie too. It's actually a really good explanation of what happens next for Norman when he gets out of the asylum years and years later.
Interesting.
Very cool, and more of an actual slasher.
Is the second one that kind of laid the groundwork for the TV show that then came out, you would say?
No, the TV show, they kind of made up whole cloth from things that are in the book and speculating on the history there. The TV show is actually pretty good. But speaking of the book, one thing I wanted to bring up, we mentioned true crime. So Robert Bloch lived about 40 miles from a guy whose name was Ed Gein. And even though Bloch says that while he first came up with Psycho, he had no knowledge of Ed Gein's crimes. Ed Gein didn't get captured until 55, 56, a couple years before he wrote the book. He said that he did not base it on Ed Gein until the very end when he added some aspects of it, like the domineering mom. But he said, you had most of it in my head because I wanted to do something about a killer who was hiding in plain sight in a small town. And Ed Gein, Ryan, if you're not sure who Ed Gein is, he is a very famous serial killer, even though technically he only ever admitted to killing 2 people, but he was also a grave robber. And he's a guy who a couple of movies you may have heard of are based on because of his proclivities of what he would do with the stuff that he robbed from his graves. He's the basis for Psycho. He's also the basis for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because he liked to turn all these bodies he got into cutlery and plates and chairs and household furnishings. And he also liked to turn the skins into suits.
Who does that sound like?
Buffalo Bill.
Jeez. This was all one guy?
All one guy. He is one of the most messed up humans in the history of crime. When they got to his house, they found a absolute, just insane spread of bodies and body parts.
Furniture made of bones and skin.
Heads in the fridge. The last woman he killed was hung up like a deer that he'd caught and just gutted her. But the bottom line is that this movie came out a few years after those crimes were revealed. He had a domineering mother who he dressed up as, talked like, had walled up, mummified in her bedroom after she passed away. There's a lot of crossover.
Oh my goodness.
With Psycho. Some of this stuff really happened. Now, he had a very low IQ, was not a very social guy, and was not anywhere near as amenable and nice and charismatic as Tony Perkins.
Yeah.
Which is why he was ultimately caught, because he was just acting weird and squirrely. And
well, if your whole house is filled with just body parts. I imagine at some point someone's going to catch on.
You'd think, except that he was able to get away with it for years because it was in a small town and no one went to check up on him because he lived in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't until he went out and started killing actual people in the town that they were like, let's go check on the Geen boy down up the way there.
Yeah. I don't remember what serial killer it was. There's another serial killer who was in a similar situation where he mutilated bodies, and he lived in like an apartment complex, and people would complain about
Narrow it down.
People would complain about the stench.
Isn't that Dahmer?
But then he would
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Dahmer. Thank you.
Yeah.
But he would just hide it all when people came for inspections, and they were like,
Hide
it must
it?
be like a plumbing issue or whatever.
Would barely hide it. The cops, that's a whole other, we want to get into true crime and serial killers.
That's a whole.
We can go down that rabbit hole.
That's a different
Because
podcast.
Dahmer is definitely an interesting case. The cops let him get away with so much. They said, "Oh, the smell smells like that's not what you think it is." They're like, "Okay, there's a head in my freezer, but no big deal."
Exactly. Oh man, honestly, and also, who's the Superman looking? The guy who plays the boyfriend, Sam or whatever. He seemed like, I was like, this guy looks like he could be Christopher Reeve. And like, I don't think I know this guy's name. I don't think I've ever seen him before, but he looks like a Christopher Reeve meets Elvis.
So his name is John Gavin, or was John Gavin, and he was actually a fairly new actor at the time. He'd only been acting for like 4 years at the point when he got the part
Interesting.
in this movie. His real name is Juan Vincent Apablasa.
What?
He had to change his name. He was, I know he went to the army, but he ended up being the U.S. diplomat to Mexico in the 80s.
Okay.
And he was also the SAG, president of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, the union,
What?
between 71 and 73. Yeah, interesting cat.
That's very
Also, I don't know if you
interesting.
noticed, Dan, did you notice what his character's name was?
Which one?
John Gavin.
Sam
Is it
something.
Sam?
It's Sam Loomis.
Oh, wow.
Also the name
Billy Loomis.
of the psychiatrist, Billy Loomis
Billy
in
Loomis
Scream.
from Scream, but then also
Sam Loomis from Halloween.
Dr. Loomis. Wow.
Dr. Loomis.
So wait, so they just keeping the name going as like iconic?
Why not?
That's fun. That's cool.
It's also pretty funny because Janet Leigh has a daughter with Tony Curtis named Jamie Lee Curtis, who was also in Halloween.
Ryan, did you know that?
Well, we talked about Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
Oh,
What do you
okay.
mean?
No, but did you know that that's her mother?
We had a whole conversation about that.
No, but did you know that
No, I
Janet
didn't.
Leigh's her mom?
You do know who Jamie Lee Curtis is,
This
right?
Yes,
Yes.
I do. Yes. Well, from Freaky Friday, I made the joke already.
I understand, but did you know that Janet Leigh is her mom?
No, I did not.
See it? Look at that.
This is a whole web of like you guys were referencing. I was like, I know half of these things, but I follow where I can.
No, so that was Jamie Lee Curtis's mom who got stabbed in the shower. So that's her connection.
Crazy,
Isn't it?
And honestly, now that you say it, I see the resemblance.
Yeah.
But I would never have put that together. Oh, by the way, total tangent. But did you guys see that we talked about Ghostface being in Mortal Kombat in a previous episode? Did you guys see that it's actually confirmed as Billy Loomis as Ghostface as the character?
Really?
I did not see that.
He's revealed in some of the fatalities
That's
and
cool.
stuff. They actually have his likeness.
Wow.
Anyway, while we're on the Loomis
Speaking
note,
of Billy Loomis and of psychos and of all of psychiatrists and all the rest of the mental health, I wanted to ask you guys something maybe a little bit more serious about this movie, because this is a movie about a very sick man who has some realistic psychological issues, things that happen in real life. But do you feel that the way that his mental issues were portrayed was fair? Do you feel like it was portrayed well, or do you feel like it was unfair? What did you think about the psychology of Norman Bates in this movie?
honestly, for the most part, I think it was done fairly well. I think the only thing that I can point to that I think might have been able to be done a little bit better is, considering the twist of the movie and the kind of exposition dump at the end, they really heavily imply like, oh, he lost this battle of personas, like this consciousness war going on in his brain. He hasn't really been Norman for a long time and has mostly been the mother. But to Daniel's point earlier, we really see him more as Norman the majority of the movie.
Or we think we
and I
do.
do think, yeah. And so I think it's hard to kind of nail, it's hard to hinge it all on like, yeah, Norman doesn't really exist anymore and he's mostly mother, when most of the interaction that we see is with Norman, and Norman's able to kind of maintain that level of like
Normalcy.
normalcy. Thank you. That's a good word for it. Of like the fact that he's so socially kind of presenting and is able to passively engage with multiple people throughout the film. That feels like a slightly flimsy premise considering how heavily they imply that his psyche is basically gone. But outside of that, like, I feel like that's a kind of minor critique, especially considering how old the movie is and how kind of a novel concept that seems to have been at the time. I feel like otherwise, I would say it seems like it's done pretty well, at least for me. It was believable. I can't advocate for like the specifics of mental health. I'm not a psychologist myself, but like it seemed believable.
But Dan, you kind of sniffed about the psychologist there, or the psychiatrist.
Well, okay, so I mean, it was just a huge exposition. Huge. I forgot how big it was. I was like, oh my gosh, he's just like, here's the backstory. I was like,
Oh yeah, it's just like
I would love to just be sitting in the conversation he had. Like, show me that a little bit before you, instead of just like the
and he's snooty about it.
And that's what I want to say is that I think in terms of the context and like what the information that they're giving, I think that felt like they were kind of treating it well. Like they were trying to analyze what could really break in this man's psyche to turn him that way. But they did it in a dramatic effect as opposed to this like, whereas I think it should, if it had done it in like this compassionate way where the guy's like, as a psychologist is trying to understand how this like tragedies occurred. Instead, he comes at it because, you know, we're trying to do this suspense movie. So he's like, he's never been the same and he lost this battle. And so that's where
it feels a little mustache twirly for sure.
Exactly. So it's like, it's still treating the mental health in an entertainment aspect. So again, I think that it's tiptoeing into the ground that we need to get to when we're talking about mental health issues, but it's still too early that it's still kind of keeping it in that entertainment level.
Well, I agree as well. I mean, it's all well and good to show someone who is mentally disturbed and show their downward spiral, and ultimately, at the time, show something which was very shocking, which is a man dressed in a woman's dress and trying to stab you, and there's a corpse in his basement, and all the rest of it. That's a very shocking moment, and then all of a sudden, you have 5 minutes of Simon Oakland acting like he's on stage, and literally everyone is sitting in a circle watching him, and we're watching people watch this guy go, no, you see, the thing is, he thinks he's his mother. It's wild. You may have never seen anything like this before. Let me tell you more.
Yeah,
you know, it
exactly
just, it's just everything grinds to a halt.
Can I tell you one thing that really, really upset me about that scene now is that what's Janet Leigh's sister's name in the movie? Anyway, her
Vera.
sister.
Oh, well, yeah. That's Lila. But Vera Miles plays her.
Yeah, but she's like, did he kill my sister? And he's like, yes. And no response.
Yes.
Like,
just moves on.
She doesn't cry. It's just like, it's not like the realization.
She doesn't even fully
like,
ask.
Yeah.
She's like, is she? And he goes,
he's like,
yes.
Yep. Dead.
I mean, yeah,
and it's like
he totally killed her, but there's something more important here, and that's he thinks he's his mom.
And then, but like, she's just sitting there going, okay, now I need to listen to. I'm like, hold on, your sister is now confirmed murdered, and this is how you're just gonna now listen to this psychological lesson. That's where I was like, okay, come on. But beyond that, go ahead. That was like,
okay. My sister's dead, but why was he in a dress?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because the way that you put like the fact that he acts like he's on stage, there were multiple points throughout the film that I felt like it felt almost like a play between how much we observe people, between the stage direction, especially that final scene too. Like it definitely feels almost theatrically presented more than it does like cinematically presented in a lot of ways, which I thought was interesting and might just be a product of the time. But that was something I caught as well.
I would say that what maybe it doesn't treat well, or what it doesn't use well to actually explain or showcase this mental, this issue he's facing in dialogue. It does do it in an interesting visual way. And that I noticed watching it this time again was like, especially that first conversation he has with Janet Leigh and when he made her those sandwiches in the parlor. And as soon as she brings up mother in a certain way, the angle goes low, and then you see those owls swooping over him, and the way that Hitchcock then begins to light under his eyes, so it's like the bottom rims of his eyes glow. That's, I feel like, was the visual cue of like, this is now Mother that she's talking to, not Norman. It's now Mother. And like, you can see him do it again in certain parts too. The lighting, even like further on when it's like in like a dimly lit room and his eye and just like the base of his eyes are like really bright and white. That's when I was like, oh, we're watching Mother right now. We're not watching Norman. So I thought that was like something interesting visually to kind of see where he was mentally that I hadn't noticed before.
I never caught that. The one that I did catch was that the language he was using. I don't remember the exact line, but he says something around the lines of like, they always like mean well. They like their thick heads and their like, he says something about their
thick tongues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like whatever he says there, I was like, that feels really out of left field for like the tone of the conversation. I didn't even catch that switch, but now that you say that, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Tony Perkins is so good in this movie. There's so much nuance and detail to his performance. It's really, I think it's become less underrated, but it was very underrated at the time, just how good he was. So, boys, we've got to get to the end here. I want to point out one quick thing psychologically, and this is kind of pointed at Ryan, because Ryan, one thing that you brought up when we watched Silence of the Lambs, another Ed Gein movie, where the killer dresses as a woman or comes across as a woman, or in that movie's case, taking a woman's suit. But in that movie and this movie, they both make it very clear that the killer is not a transvestite. Mm-hmm. But yet in this one, you like that one, you were like, I was really, I didn't like the way that it was portrayed. In this one, they do the same sort of thing where the psychologist says, no, he's not a transvestite. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that it was made more clear in this one than Silence of the Lambs?
I actually think it was handled better in this one, almost because like the other one tried to nuance it too much and it got muddy. This one, literally, they're like, no, that's not the case. And here's the reason why. And we're moving on. Like, it was very cut and dry. It drew the line. And then they were like, this is very clearly not about the gender thing at all. It's purely about his mom. And we're not even going to entertain the notion that it could be anything else. And that felt better, frankly. It didn't leave any room for questioning. It was like, some dude like ignorantly like, cause he's a transvestite. And they're like, nah, actually this. And they're just like, cool. And I was like, cool.
Yeah. And
well handled.
Simon
frankly.
Oakland plays it like like a professor, and you're his class, and you're like, okay, professor, I'm sorry I said anything.
Exactly.
Oh,
and honestly, handled better, ironically.
You shut that down for me. So guys, we got to get to the fun part of the show, which is, the more fun part of the show, which is where we figure out why someone died in this movie. Not a lot of options to pick from in this. But before we do that, I do have a quick trivia question about Psycho. Lot of things that Psycho did that were original or maybe hadn't been seen before. But what is, in North America, it was the very first time something was ever shown and heard at the same time on film. The very first time this was depicted, and it was depicted both in picture and in sound. Dan, what was the very first thing ever done in Psycho?
Is it okay if I answer this? Try to answer,
yes,
Ryan?
it's a trivia question, please.
All right.
I only have one guess, so I'll throw out, I think it's going to be the shower, but...
Dan, what is the correct answer?
I thought it was the toilet.
It is the toilet.
Okay.
Oh.
It's the very first time a toilet was shown being flushed, and you heard the sound of a toilet be flushed in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy.
Yeah. But not as crazy as what comes next. Gentlemen, we got to figure out why someone died. You've got two really big ones here. The big, amazing shot of Arbogast falling down the stairs. Janet Leigh's all-time kill in the shower. Gentlemen, let's start with you, Dan. Why did someone die in this movie?
Janet Leigh's character should have got some better rest. I think that if she was had a little bit better rest, she would not have had to pull over to Bates Motel. Therefore, probably would have gotten away with the embezzlement, would have been on her private island like she was saying she always wanted, instead of dead in the shower.
Well, now hold on a
just
second.
Get some sleep. Get some more sleep, girl.
I'm gonna get technical on you because
Okay, go
technically
ahead.
she'd had a nap in the car, and that's when the cop caught her.
But she didn't sleep. She didn't go somewhere to sleep. She slept uncomfortably in her car.
Yeah, it was because the rain. It was because the unseasonable monsoon in Bakersfield, California, or up to 99 or wherever she was at the time.
True. Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, I guess my choice is wrong then.
No,
Or not the best choice.
amend it. Think on your feet. You got this.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Why did she die? Okay. Why did she die? I think that she should have locked the door. Maybe
that's a good one.
Or
that's a good one.
Lock the hotel. I mean, he has keys.
He's got keys.
So unfortunately,
maybe not.
there's I don't know. But
well, she could have locked the bathroom too.
Yeah, that's true.
To be fair,
just lock it up. But she had nothing to be scared of. But maybe lock the door.
Janet Leigh, for the rest of her life, said she was uncomfortable taking showers.
I remember
hearing
that
after she saw this movie because she I never realized how vulnerable you are in a shower. And this movie, it's like people with sharks after Jaws, going in the ocean after Jaws. Like it messed people up for showers.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Lock the door, kids.
I feel like that's a trivia
shower.
that you would see like when you were kids in the 90s when you sat in the AMC theater and they're like, did you know that Janet Leigh only took baths for the rest of her life after Psycho? I'm like, oh, wow, that's cool.
You should know something, Dan. I'm a walking AMC trivia screen.
Yes.
So Ryan, why did someone die in Psycho?
I'm going to throw out nobody fights back at all. But she
tried.
She sits there.
She tried.
No, she doesn't. She sits there and she screams like this. And then like at one point she turns around. Like she turns her back to him and gets stabbed.
I'm going to send you a screenshot
too.
where she's doing this thing where she was trying to grab the knife. It's in the beginning. It's in the open when he's first.
Okay, well,
she's blinded by water and shampoo.
I mean, it works for both of them because he definitely like walks. Which also they had a really weird shot when he was walking up the stairs that like seemed almost dream sequency. I'm like, I don't know how they did that back then, but he walks up the stairs and she, like mother rushes out with the knife and he just kind of goes and like like for those listening at home, he sticks up his arms, basically makes a shocked face, and then falls down the stairs. Like nobody fights back at all. Like there's no wounds, there's no blood, there's nothing.
They're too busy being shocked that a dude in a bad wig and a dress is coming at them with a butcher knife.
That's fair, but I feel like survival instinct kicks in at a certain point. Like, sure, shock of a man dressed as a woman is one thing, but the knife is convincing.
Slashed across the face, then stumbled down a huge flight of stairs, hits the floor, and before he has know what to do, Norman's snapping again.
I agree with you, but I'm talking top of the stairs. I think top of the stairs, and I think like I'm gonna stick with it. Nobody fights Norman back at all, and there's no self-defense at like ever portrayed.
To Ryan's defense, the one dude that does fight back against him is Sam, and Sam just takes him out. Like just grabs him, and Norman's in his arms going making that weird face.
It's kind of an awkward face he makes. Like, is he? Yeah. Like, he's waking up from a long nap.
It is.
He's like,
it's a very strange. It is very strange.
Oh, mother! What time is it? It's very true. But yes, okay. So let's talk about Arbogast falling down the stairs because that's the one I'm going to pick because I know why Arbogast died in that way. In the book, Norman comes at him, or Mother comes at him in the foyer with a razor blade and kills him down there. Then the reason that Hitchcock had to go to the top of the stairs is he really wanted to do that cool shot of him falling down the stairs. They rigged up a chair for him to sit on, and they had a special camera going along with it to do the vertigo shot where they zoom out as they push in. So Arbogast dies because Hitchcock really wanted a cool shot in this movie.
That's absolutely right.
You know,
that's the
fair.
best. That's the best answer.
That's why you died, bro. Don't be in a Hitchcock movie. He doesn't have enough cool shots.
Very true.
All right.
You're going out.
We got to rate it. We got to do our skull rating.
It's skull rating time. It's skull rating time. I'm going to come in with a 9.5.
Wow.
For my skull ratings.
Nice.
9.5. 9.5. It misses out for me just because it never really worked with the structure and the end with the like we said, the monologue of exposition dump at the end just kills it dead for me. It's an all-time classic. It's one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It's why it's a 9.5. To me, though, there are just better horror movies out there. So 9.5 for Psycho from me.
All right, I'm gonna say I'll go with about a 9. The reason I say 9 is I think it's a masterpiece of a movie as well from Hitchcock. I mean, everything's pretty flawless, except rewatching it again, I do feel like maybe we could have sped up a little bit of the opening of Janet getting out of town. That I feel like maybe that structure was a little too slow. I think that helped build the tension, but maybe just shave off a little bit. And then on top of that exposition jump at the end, I totally forgot about how much that was and how just silly that was. And I wish that her sister kind of reacted to finding out that her sister was just murdered, but she does not. So that gives me a 9.
It loses a full point because Vera Miles did not react appropriately.
Shed a tear. You come all this way to try to find your sister. You almost die. You go through this whole thing where the murderer of your sister almost murders you, and you can't even cry. I'm just saying.
That's just mean. Dan is coming down hard on Vera Miles in this. All right, Ryan, it is your turn. What is your Skull Award? The first time you've ever watched the proto-slasher, first ever slasher movie, Psycho, which you chose to watch. What do you give it as far as a skull rating?
Don't hate me, but I'm going to come in at 7.5.
Whoa. Okay.
And the thing is, I think that cinematically it's cool. I think the story's good. I think the characterization is good. I think that Norman Bates' actor kills it. Perkins really does a great job in the role. I think that as much as the suspense and like the cinematography and some of that stuff has held up, I think that the pacing has not held up to modern standards, and the movie feels slow a lot of the time. And yes, there's suspense to some of the rooms and watching people do things, but I actually looked it up. Generally speaking, the accepted total dialogue in the 109-minute film is around 20 minutes of the 109-minute runtime. And that, I felt like it dragged. And like, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. I definitely would recommend it to other people, but I can't really, I like a high, like a mid-C, low B kind of area feels right. Cause there was a lot of it that I was like, okay, I get it. Like another car in the swamp. We don't have to sit on this. Like, cool.
Hey, man, it was Joseph Stefano's second ever movie he wrote. I mean, give him a break, man.
I mean, granted, it's early cinema. Like, that's definitely an age thing. Like, we don't need the scene of them talking outside the church and they're like, it's Sunday. Come submit the report over dinner. It'll make it easier. Like that, it at times feels like a stage play in not the greatest way. But overall, it was still a very good film. So I'm going to go 7.5.
All right. So a 7.5 from Ryan, a 9, a nice solid 9 from Dan, and a 9.5 from myself. So we all thought Psycho's a great movie. Definitely one of the most important movies of all time. I think we can all agree on that. Certainly very influential for so many movies that came after it. But with it done, with Psycho off of our docket, that means it's time for Ryan to reach into his Avengers bucket, very themey for this show, and pull out
very exciting
a brand new prompt. Always a very exciting moment on the show. His hand is in there. He's reaching around. He's fiddling. He's drawing it out. Ryan, what did you pick?
After reaching past Spider-Man, I got betrayal.
All right. Betrayal.
That's exciting, actually.
Interesting.
I have no idea. I have no initial idea where I'm going to go with this, but I will figure it out.
Great. I love that. Go do some research, figure something out. One of the fun aspects of this show is that Ryan has seen almost no horror movies ever, so it's always a guess whenever he has to go choose a movie. So
I sure hope whatever I pick actually involves betrayal.
Or if it doesn't, it will spawn a very good discussion of what betrayal actually is. Kind of like Slasher in this show today.
I can always swing for the fences. I can always find I'll find something to work.
That's part of the fun. And also part of the fun is revealing what the next episode will be about. It is time for the drum roll. Dan, what was your prompt and what are you going to pick to watch on the next episode?
Is it my turn?
It is. You're next.
Is? Oh my god!
Yeah, that's true.
We're going back for round 3. This is the end of round 2. Round 3 begins with you.
Oh my gosh! It is me. Okay, so I totally forgot. totally forgot.
I got it right here. You had happiness.
I
You
know.
picked happiness as your
totally
prompt.
forgot. I wasn't ready. I'm ready now. Okay.
It's only a show.
It's only a show. Okay. Happiness.
No, don't worry. No one was listening.
No
one's paying attention. It's all
It'll be
good.
fine. It'll be fine.
All right. Happiness. Happiness. Okay.
How's
happiness.
that Celsius treating you over
It's not. I guess I need more of it. Let me pop open a second one. Okay, so happiness was my choice. I have it here, so I'm not that much out of the loop. This is proof that I still have it.
there? You have it. All right.
Okay, so
Recovery.
there's many different ways that I could go. I was thinking something about smile or maybe a happy death day, but I wanted to go a little bit more nuanced, and I wanted to go and explore a director that gets a lot of love or does not get a lot of love, Karen Kusama. I gotta look this up. Hold
Karen
on, guys.
Kusama, that works.
Okay. Anyways, her film is called The Invitation. And the reason I picked The Invitation is it's this very quiet, slow building where you might not think it's a horror film, but let's see what happens, Ryan. But there may be a little bit of cultiness involved in it. A cult that provides a lot of happy and love.
I think let I haven't seen it since it came out.
You have not? You have seen it?
I have seen it. I saw it right when it came out. I like it a lot. I don't want to say anything more about it. I don't want to spoil anything for Ryan. I think the themes, the plot, I'll let it play out. I will say a fantastic movie for anyone who lives in Los Angeles.
Ooh, yes.
You said that with your whole face.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Your whole face said fantastic.
It's fantastic for living in LA. This one hit home to me as someone who's been in LA for a while. So I'm looking forward to watching this. Thank you. Great pick,
It's been a while
Dan.
since I've seen it, so I'm excited.
But with that, we have come to the very end of our show here today. So thank you, everyone, for following us all the way through this discussion of Psycho. Stick around. Come back next episode in 2 weeks. We're going to be doing The Invitation, Dan's pick for the prompt, Happiness. And, of course, stick around because we're going to have to figure out what my next movie is. We're going to find that out at the end of next show. And then, of course, Ryan's got to give a pick for Betrayal. With that, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Go check us out on Instagram, TIWYD Pod on Instagram. And for Dan Marcha Madness, for Ryan Ross Live, I am Sir Ian Dangerous. We will see you right here next time on
This is why you die.